use that benefits us as a manufacturer. So we're targeting based on the properties of aluminum, so we can lightweight, but at the same time it allows a lot of freedom in design. So for instance, you have a typical, and I should clarify that we're not doing anything on side underride. We've always approached rear underride to this point. But a typical rear underride structure out of steel might be around 120 pounds, and we found that we could match its strength, and we were around 80 pounds. So we were almost half the weight, 75, 80 pounds, about half the weight. And then when we want to increase the strength, we were able to match a current weight with between 2 and at this time about 5 times the strength, but just a little bit more weight in aluminum. So it's just, for us, we're just out there trying to showcase that this can be done. These are our customers that we're working with.
So we're not talking about aluminum cans and tin foil. We're talking about some fairly robust metal that ultimately, by even eliminating the weight, you can still have the strength. And I want you to, before you address that, talk about rear underride guards in general, because we haven't had a lot of discussion about that today, and what's involved with the types of tests that are performed. It's my understanding that your company has actually performed one of those tests.
Yeah, so we, in order to prove out our concept, we found it necessary to actually create it as a prototype and test it. So we conducted tests. Your standard IIHS test that you will see videos of would be a 35-mile-an-hour crash. We passed that with multiple designs, and then we put forth a design that we tested at 40 miles an hour, and it doesn't seem like a big difference, but energy is a squared relationship, so that 5 miles an hour was a significant improvement in energy, and we successfully passed that as well at a 30% offset.
You know what a 30% offset is?
30% offset for the rear would be your worst case scenario, where as you approach the back of a trailer in a collision situation, you're going to obviously not want to strike that, so you're going to swerve. If you're successful, you will completely avoid the trailer. Unfortunately, if you're not, you're going to clip the weakest part of that guard, and that's the far outer edge. So when we talk about 30%, that's 30% of the vehicle is only engaging with the trailer itself.
I'm going to have to pass the mic to David Dorrity real quick. David, you've seen a lot of different crash tests or crashes that you've investigated over the years where real people have died or have suffered horrible consequences as a result of these crashes. Tell us, have you seen both rear guard, rear side and front override in your career? And tell us some of the stories of some of the things that you've seen.
I have a number of, we call them frontal collisions, where the truck strikes something and then rides over that vehicle, just presses it right to the ground. As far as one story that we currently have active here, I won't be able to mention the names, it involves a truck driver that had missed his turn, was on a road that he did not understand. He was lost. He was using his GPS device. Unfortunately, took his eyes off the roadway, looked down at his GPS device, and ran through a stop sign on a 4-lane highway. Unfortunately, there was a mother with her child coming down the road in a convertible and ran right underneath that tractor-trailer rig. The driver knew that he was not going to be able to make the stop at the stop sign, so he decided to go on through, said he didn't see anything coming. When he got out of the truck, got his truck stopped, a witness had stopped that witnessed this, and he said, "Where's the car?" He said, "What do you mean, where's the car? It's over there in that field." This car had gone all the way underneath this trailer because it was a convertible. It had very little resistance. The mother and the child were killed right there. The driver called his company. A witness heard him say, "I just killed 2 people." He was very remorseful, made a bad mistake. Whether he made a mistake or not, 2 people were killed. He was brought up for reckless homicide. He may do time. So being a former, prior to my consulting, I owned a trucking company for 20 years. And I've managed truck drivers. I've hired hundreds of them as a consultant. I've supervised companies in the hiring of their drivers and training. We can train. Even if the driver makes no mistake, somebody gets hurt with these, and I've seen numerous cases. Many times the claims and the injuries are so severe, I find that many companies are way underinsured. I'm convinced that these cases are way underreported. If my office is any indication of that, just by the sheer number of my one shop and how many we have investigated.
Yeah, I want you to hold on to the mic for a second. Talk about how these guards would actually benefit that poor truck driver, just like the poor family. They've lost loved ones in that. I mean, he has to live with that on his conscience for the rest of his life. And is he going to jail as a result of this too?
He may.
So
Charges are pending.
So tell us how these guards benefit the truck driver, because if you have the truck drivers on board with these guards, telling their industry that they need to be on board, tell us the pros for having a truck driver with these guards, why it's important.
I'll never be able to get out of my mind. One of the things that I was provided, I'm provided a lot of information after the case has been filed. One of the things that I can't get out of my mind is the video with the officer at the police station as he's being interviewed.
The truck driver's being
The truck driver. And the truck driver breaks down and just weeps and says, "I've killed somebody." And the officer tries to console him. And my understanding is, we've not deposed him yet, my client has not deposed him yet, that he's suffering from PTSD. And I've heard that same story on numbers of occasions. This isn't about the truck driver today, I understand, but there is
No,
a
it's
total.
about the truck driver too. We got to convince the truck driver. Go ahead.
There is. Our industry appreciates that. I think many of the trucking companies appreciate that, but they don't appreciate it enough to do anything for the drivers. For example, the distracted driving issue there. The company had a strict policy. They did not condone what he did. They admitted he should not have done what he did, but yet he still ran the red light or ran the stop sign and somebody was killed. But I've had another case, I think the period I've been involved in the past was a bicyclist. Now, I did a little project in Europe this last summer, and in England and France and countries like that, they've had side underride guards for years. I don't know how many decades they've had them. Primarily, my understanding was
3 decades.
3 decades, and primarily, initially, it was to prevent bicyclists and mopeds. If you've been over there, you know what I'm talking about. They're just everywhere. From getting entrapped under the side of those when some of these trailers might off track. And in one particular case, an amateur bicyclist, decked out in all of his riding gear. I don't remember what his occupation was, but he was a professional. He was out riding his bike, and a trailer off-tracked and caught him up under the tandems of the side of the trailer, and it ran over his body and killed him right there. That's different than what we're testing here today, but that would be one of the residual benefits to side underride work.
Okay, so I'm going to have Perry talk for a minute. Perry, it's my understanding that you're going to be at the Mid-American Truck Show later this week as of tomorrow, right?
That's correct.
Tell us what you're doing there and why you're there. Tell us what you can do to advance the cause.
Well, displaying on a shorter trailer than we have here today, a version of the AngelWing. I look forward to talking to truckers, safety professionals, and getting their feedback, letting them know that it's not only about the four-wheel drivers out there, but about the truck drivers and protecting them. It's about reducing risk, reducing loss for the companies that operate these trailers, and the benefit in that regard.
So I want to thank you for that. I want to thank you guys. Pass the mic over to Malcolm real quick. Here's the burning question. Why are original equipment manufacturers not doing this? Why aren't they putting them on there? And I'm going to actually ask all the panelists that. We're going to have David Friedman talk next. Why is this not being done in your perspective? I want to hear every opinion.
I wouldn't answer that as to I don't know everyone's the reasons why people would choose to do things or not to do things. We purely offer them the option to do that. But I think we just want to make sure that folks know that there's a lot of different viable technologies, RSP aluminum being one of them to design with. And so as people have questions, I'm excited to hear what Perry comes across here at Mid-America this year. But I like to get that feedback. I'm an engineer, and my job is to solve problems. And I'm hired by a company that manufactures aluminum, so I apply aluminum to those solutions. So I think that as we get feedback and get better idea, when we hear problems, whether it comes from the OE or the OE's customers, which is the truck driver at the end of the day. We take that into account, and then we try to solve those problems.
Thank you. David Friedman. Tell me why you think the industry's not doing this, and why do we have to go to such lengths to create grassroots scenarios and have true victims of these crashes be the ones that are driving the process behind us? What's your perception and perspective as to why NHTSA is so slow, why the industry's so slow, et cetera?
I mean, on the one hand, obviously, you've got to ask each individual owner of each company why they're making the choice. I mean, we've seen this kind of challenge across all sorts of technologies. It's everything from a focus on the bottom line every quarter instead of every year or every 5 or 10 years. You know, really investing in the future, investing in doing the right thing and innovating versus how do I squeeze that extra penny every quarter. And frankly, that's why government's got to step in. That's why leaders have to step up. Because if you go with the same question, you're going to get the same answer every single time. There's always a reason, there's always an excuse. And it's time to cut around the reasons and cut around the excuse and don't give people the choice. Sure, if you need leaders to get out there and take some risks and realize that if they're worried about putting themselves at a competitive disadvantage, the halo that just doing this is going to give them a competitive advantage. If any big company, a Walmart, a FedEx, if they get out there and do this, they're going to get high praise from a lot of people. And that alone is probably worth a lot more money than they spend on marketing every year. But at the end of the day, there's always going to be some folks who aren't going to do it, and that's why we need